Thank you for this informative video, Joseph. Dr. Garima, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and we look forward to hearing you on this very interesting topic, which is on academic writing, and we hope to have a wonderful session. Before we begin to hear you, I would like to invite the moderator of today's session, Dr. Sandesha Rayapa Garbial. May I have a brief introduction from my end for the moderator? Dr. Rayapa is an assistant professor at Linguistic Empowerment Cell at GNU University, GNU New Delhi. She specializes in English language teaching with a PhD in syllabus design for communication skills. Dr. Rayapa has gained experience in planning and developing curricula in both English as a second language as well as English as a foreign language scenarios. Since May 2020, Dr. Rayapa has been a co-convener of a two-day workshop series every month, which is known as VTOM, if I'm correct in pronouncing this acronym. And this VTOM workshop has been having over 2,000 university faculty participating in every session. Apart from being invited as a speaker or a resource person to over 30 webinars and online lectures, she has also recently been coordinating her own weekly webinar series, especially for bridging the gap between language teachers and researchers. Based on her ELT experience, ELTAI and RELO India nominated her as one of the faculty to represent Indian teachers at the TESOL 2020 Virtual Convention and Language Expo, which had thousands of school teachers, university faculty, and language consultants from all over the 6 continents. Dr. Rayapa has been a regular resource person for English language training to the ASO, in the various ministries of the Indian government and has also been appointed as an English language expert for testing the English language skills for air traffic control officers and pilots of the Airport Authority of India's northern region. Nothing gives this Sagittarian more happiness than seeing her participants gain confidence as they attain their maximum potential. This is what we read from Dr. Rayapa's profile, and we are pleased to do so. So, welcome, Dr. Rayapa, to this session. And may I now request you to give an introduction of our resource person, Dr. Dalal. Thereafter, the resource person can take over. So over to you, Dr. Rayapa.
Thank you, Dr. Kanoongo. I hope I got the pronunciation correct of your surname.
Yeah, sure, that is right.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. So welcome to today's series of, the talks that have begun. And we are quite fortunate to have my colleague, Dr. Garima Dalal, presenting today and giving the talk out here. So let me just tell you a brief introduction about her, though she has a longer profile than maybe even mine, but she's cut it short. So here goes. Dr. Garima Dalal is a linguist teaching English for academic writing to research scholars and postgraduates at Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has been teaching English language and linguistics for the past 14 years in various international universities like South Asian University by SARC and national universities like Jamia Millia Islamia University and Delhi University. Dr. Dalal has been a resource person to many national and international organizations and universities like the University of Essex, UK, the Staff Selection Commission, the Government of India, along with assisting in speech and language therapy at the National Health Services, NHS UK. And with this, I would like to welcome her to give her talk titled English for Academic Writing, Make Your Moves Matter. Thank you, Dr. Dalal.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rayapa, for such a warm welcome. And I congratulate and thank the committee members of ELTAI for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts, my ideas with the ELTAI members and especially my colleagues across India. When I was approached to for the session, it got me thinking about, where we all meet. We meet because we are all writing academically, and especially in English. We are all English language teachers. And these were some of the basic moves that I thought would help all of us across to connect, to share our views and our thoughts. So this is an inspiration from Graff and Birkenstein's book called They Say, I Say. So you would find most references there. I won't like to give you proper references because this is only one book. So I hope you enjoy the session. Now, when we talk about writing per se, we never think of listening. Are we ever listening to what, we write? So Graff and Birkenstein, they say, and they start with a quotation, that a good argumentative writing begins not with an act of assertion, but an act of listening, which we often forget. Now, we start not with what we think about the topic, but we actually start with what others think about it. So educators like us, we are very swift in adapting to the special conventions which differ across disciplines, across different courses. And in this entire gamut of writing, we take listening to be a very underrated skill. Now, putting ourselves in the place of those who think differently from us is also important. And that's where listening becomes an important skill for writing. So our writing is primarily a response to what is being said, be it supporting, be it correcting, complicating the other's view, summarizing others. and putting our own arguments across. So coming to academic writing, other than expressing our own ideas, like I said, our writing is a response to what others have said, others have written. And Graf and Birkenstein clearly state, these two quotations they have taken from them, that intellectual writing obviously is academic writing. I won't, but I probably wanted to feel a little better, all of us. So intellectual writing is almost always composed in response to others. Unless there's no conversation, whom exactly are we responding to? So Graf states, and this is the joining point where all of us connect, because we are teaching in different schools and different colleges and different institutions. We need to invite our students into conversations, into debates that surround them, right? Now, how do we begin? So we begin by identifying the moves that are used in academic texts that we read. So subconsciously, we find that the same moves are repeated time and again in the different texts that we read. Now, why is there a need to identify the views to which a text is responding? Isn't it? Now, there are several reasons that I can think of, and so do Graf and Birkenstein, that this helps you and your students both find something to say. We have something more substantial to say once we have read, once we have listened out to people. So in the process of reading a text or listening closely to other writers, other authors, what they're saying, or looking for an opening to enter a conversation, because many a times we don't know how to enter a conversation. We know that the conversation is going on, but we don't know how to enter it. Most importantly, in the process of reading, in the process of listening, especially like you are listening to me today, you will come across a bag full of ideas. So you generate your own ideas when you're listening to others. And that's where we need what are called as templates. Why templates? Now, we are sometimes unsure of what to say. And this is where templates help us. They help us to map, to train our moves. What move do I need to make? For example, of course, some might object that, although I concede that, I still maintain that. Now, such templates, they help our students to make a counterintuitive move to questioning our belief and to look at the topic from the perspective of those who might disagree with us. Also, these templates, they bring out aspects of our thoughts that we sometimes, kind of remark, but we do not really realize what they were or what they are. Also, templates help us summarize what someone else is saying, or maybe paraphrase a quotation in our own words, which is very typical, which is what we know. But along with that, it also indicates a view that we are responding to, because we are using evidence to support our own counter arguments. So in a way, templates, not only they help us organize our ideas, but they also help us bring those ideas in our bring those ideas to existence. Further, these templates, when we start using them, it will direct us as writers to certain key rhetorical moves, right? Not only that, it also encourages us to modify, to adapt these templates according to a particular argument, because sometimes the arguments are such that we don't really know how to figure it out in such a pattern that we do justice with it. So such templates do make our task easier, right? They act as prompts, they stimulate and shape our argument. Now, what others say about that topic, or what would a naysayer or a person who is a critic who doesn't like our argument say about my argument? Or what is my evidence? Or do I really qualify my point? So these templates help us in this. And you would be surprised to understand or know that we have actually been using templates. Majorly, templates are being used in publishing houses, in doctoral fellowships, even in personal narratives, which is very surprising. Now, when we have this book of They Say, I Say, the argument, right? I have divided my presentation into two halves. Obviously, the first half comes with They Say. Who is they? They, people we are reading, we are listening to, people whom, they are influencing our mind. So what are the moves that I would be talking about? There'll be 3 points that I would be covering here. First, what are the ways to enter a conversation? And the move that I would say is most important is what are others saying? So what kind of moves can we really play around there? Then let's talk about moves in summarizing. And the main move that I'm going to talk about is the believing it. Trust me, it is something we know, but it's just that it is a Peter Elbows concept, and we would be very surprised that we knew it all the way through. And the last one is introducing evidence, more like quotations that we take from others. So how do we put them, and what kind of move? Usually, the sandwich move is what we will take into consideration. Now, coming to the first one, the ways to enter a conversation. My entire talk would revolve around this excerpt. So I would give you all a minute, and I would probably read it out for those who are watching it through the phone. So putting in your oar. You come late. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they are engaged in a heated discussion. A discussion too heated for them to pause and tell you exactly what it is about. You listen for a while until you decide that you have caught the tenor of the argument. Then you put in your oar. Someone answers, you answer him. Another comes to your defense, another aligns himself against you. The hour goes late. You must depart. And you do depart, with the discussion still vigorously in progress. I'm sure all of you are relating to this concept, because this is how we get into conversations. We come across conversations with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family members, and even on academic platforms, right? So stating an argument can only be done in a conversation with others. We don't exist alone. We enter the dynamic world of ideas, not as isolated beings or individuals, but as social beings. We are deeply connected to others who have a stake in what we say. So the first piece of advice is listen carefully to others, including those who disagree, and engage with them very thoughtfully but respectfully. And this can help us see beyond our own pet beliefs, which may not be shared by everyone. So, what are others really saying is what is important. Now, to understand the ongoing conversation, we need to have 4 pointers in place. First, we always have a prior or an existing knowledge about a said concept. Now, this kind of information, it runs across generations and cultures. Now, when I say that, a prior existing knowledge, maybe knowledge that we gained when we were studying as students from our teachers, or maybe the knowledge that we gained while reading texts of different kinds. Let's say I'm a social linguist and I'm reading certain texts in social linguistics. So across generations, there are series of thoughts, ideologies, beliefs that different schools of thoughts are sharing across generations and across cultures. Right? So it is important for us to understand the ongoing conversation. What are others saying? And then where are we? Now, it is not only about others, but our argument that an addition to an existing conversation, right? Where do we stand? So our argument is that of an addition. Now, not only that, understanding an ongoing conversation is also important, because you are not only updating your audience, but you're taking that information box full for them to take it forward. So the next question that you can think of is, how do we really enter a conversation? right? Academic writing, as you know, it is very deeply engaged with others' views. We cannot keep our own views straight off to our audience. We need to start with something that somebody has already talked about to enter a conversation. So the first move is start with entering the conversation by what actually others are saying. Now, if you look at the diagram that you have on the slide, where this is a pictorial representation or an illustration of how our introductions really are. We start with a hook, then we move on to the context, and then we go to our thesis. Now, this is not, we don't start our they say argument right in the beginning, in the hook. Let the hook come in, and then you start with the context where you talk about what they say. So they say, if it is just you talking about your point, it was the audience. Therefore, establish what they say in your introduction, right? It is important for your audience to kind of understand what you are talking about. What is your point? And when you do that, be clear. What larger conversation are you really responding to? Because you can't be responding to in isolation. However, another take is you should not delay this point because it breaks the natural order for your readers to process the material in which readers are thinking and developing their ideas. So there are 4 ways that I'm going to talk about when you want to enter a conversation. My voice is echoing. I think somebody's mic is on. Right. So the first one is the standard way of entering a conversation. It is often said that conventional wisdom has it that Indians have always believed that mothers are supreme multitask beings, right? So we are entering a conversation. We are starting with a standard. Means when they say, whatever they are saying, whatever people are saying, whatever writers, authors are saying, this is a widely accepted and a conventional way of thinking about this topic. So that's the first way you enter a conversation. The second way is what they say is your own. Means when they say something you used to believe, but now you believe this. That is, you are responding to a view held by others, but a view that you yourself once held, right? So I have always believed that museums are boring. Or although I should know better by now, I cannot help thinking that. At the same time that I believe, I also believe that. The third way of entering a conversation, and these are the 4 moves that you can make, right, while entering a conversation, is when they did not come straight and say that this is it. So what you do is you kind of read in between the lines and say or talk about these ideas behind their views. That is usually interviews of celebrities or public figures that we come across, because they don't reveal everything about themselves. The facts assume so. So if you look at the templates, although none of them have ever said so directly, my teachers have often given me the impression that education will open doors. Or one implication of this treatment of dash is that the fourth way to enter a conversation is when it's an ongoing debate, a debated topic. It is still not settled. They are saying being debated, or let's say there are multiple views that are doing the rounds. Right? So when it comes to the topic of, let's say, X, Y, and Z, most of us will readily agree that so and so. But when this agreement usually ends, however, is on the question of, because we have a problem. So whereas some were convinced that, others maintain that. Right? So that's a typo error. I'm sorry. Right? Now, other than this way of entering a conversation, we also need to take care of what are called as return sentences. Return sentences are sentences that when you're returning back or you're responding to others or the conversation that you're entering, and you need to start with what others are saying and continue keeping it alive for your reader's view. Means you are not deviating from the topic. So basically, return sentences are somewhat kind of reminders of what parts of conversation we are participating in, or what part of conversation are we responding to. So keep reminding your readers so that they don't forget. Also, when we are writing, we have very long and complicated texts. Now, your readers, by the end of it, they're likely to forget what ideas originally motivated you. So return sentences then come in very handy. Also, return sentences kind of remind the reader of the view that I'm sharing in my work, right? The view that I'm constantly repeating. So it is getting imbibed in them, that this is my point, this is my take. Or return sentences ensure that my text maintains a point of discussion right from the start to finish. I haven't deviated. Now, listen carefully to others. Engage with them thoughtfully and respectfully, like I said, because it helps us look beyond our own beliefs. Our beliefs might differ, right? They do differ from others. But you see, that's okay. So, for example, in conclusion, then, as I suggested earlier, defenders of dash cannot have it both ways. Their assertion of that dash is contradicted by their own claim. Right? Now let's come to the second part, moves in summarizing. It is very important for you to understand why we summarize. Obviously, summarizing what they say is a basic move, right? Because this kind of a move makes, it helps us map out the summary, but it also strengthens our claim. There are two scenarios in which we usually summarize. First is, why do we feel actually shy or anxious in summarizing? Sometimes we do not like to take the trouble of reading the text again and again and struggle what it has to say, right? So we are anxious, we feel shy, we don't really want to summarize, right? We prefer quoting them, isn't it? Or we feel that going back and forth will make us actually lose our own claim or our own stand in the entire conversation. On the other end, we also summarize too much. Why? Either we lack confidence in our own opinion about a certain topic because we are trying to hide it by overloading our text with only what others are saying. Our opinion, our claim is absent, right? We like an opinion on the topic because it sounds like what A says, B believes, C claims, but we're not focusing on the topic, right? So our reader, because he is new to the conversation and we have to catch them up, we definitely need to give them a summary of what exactly is going on. What are they saying? So this brings us to the game that I mentioned, which is called the believing game, where you put yourself in to their shoes, right? It is Peter Elbow's concept of the believing game, where just like actors play the character's role, you join the conversation and you try to see the writer's perspective. What perspective does the writer have? Let readers not know whether you agree or you disagree. You need to be pretty neutral and you should show them a fair picture. Do not show the trailer and run away, leaving your audience in the lurch thinking about, what exactly did the statement mean? Give your audience enough so that they can independently think, formulate their own ideas, their own opinions, hold their own view. So provide enough summary. Take your time, slow down, tell your readers about their argument, the people's argument that you're incorporating, so that they have ample space to assess the points themselves, right? If you summarize your text in a rush, we will make the mistake of not giving a very clear view. Now, once you are over with your summary, post summary, you should ensure that what they are saying is exactly what I am saying. they match up. So once a summary enters your text, you should think of it or look at it like a giant property, where reflecting what is the original saying is equivalent to what your own views are. Right? So you really have to narrow down the summary. So remember, a good summary has a focus. It should fit in with your agenda while still being very true to the text that you are summarizing. And this is one of the mistakes that I see a lot of us are making. Other than this, you should also keep two things in mind. First, avoid listing summaries. Listing summaries, it puts your reader to sleep. I give you a list, you will get really bored as my audience, right? Also, what you can do is you can use signal words. Now, signal words, tailor your verbs, right, to suit the actions that you want to describe. The authors you summarize rarely believe, state, or discuss, isn't it? I have used the word state in my first or the second slide, right? So rather than, because this was not an argument, right? But when you are in an argument or in an argumentative essay or writing, use words like urge, emphasize, protest, complain, challenge, right? Use very precise signal verbs, right? Contend, complicate, contradict, encourage, plead. So these are important. Now let's look at the third move, the third section of moves, which is introducing evidence. Right? Obviously, all of us are familiar with quotations. Quoting from documented sources not only adds credibility to your argument, but it also shows that we are building up from an argument on certain documented sources, certain relied facts, certain facts that have already been searched upon by researchers and claimed to be true. They are not our random thoughts. So I'm not saying, look, I'm not just making this up. She makes this claim and here it is in her exact words. So I'm quoting her. Quotation is only important then, right? So quote enough to support your argument, but not so much that you are bombarding your reader with random quotations, slapping them in your argument. I have seen a lot of us do that, including me, right? So use them to back your argument and not vice versa. Now, how do we do that? So that's when the moves come in. Now, quotations are like orphans, even though I don't like the statement, but that's how the writer also puts it. Well, they cannot speak for themselves. They need us, they need you. So to avoid readers to misunderstand your quotes, you need to do two things. First, choose your quotations wisely, right? See how well does the source is supporting a particular section of your text. How well is it doing that, right? So you are choosing your quotation based on a particular section of your text and how the source that you're taking actually is supporting it. Or what do you want to do with selected quotations? You need to ask yourself.
Dr. Dalal,
Yes.
hi. I just wanted to give you a time check that it's 5:12 right now. And would you like to take 5 minutes more? Because
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
all right. So I'll give you a check at 5:20 if you like, all right?
Great.
Thank you.
So I know academic writing is messy, it is lengthy, but a quote's purpose is to support your claim and not to provide that you've read it. The second part is quotations do not speak for themselves. They need a frame around them where you do the speaking for them, right? You're telling that in a frame, this is what the picture is. So don't abandon a quotation in a haste or a rush. On to another point, because I know haste makes waste, right? So sometimes you will wonder, should I explain or not? So when you're in doubt, take the risk, explain the quotation. Chaya, can you please mute yourself? Thanks. Now, when you look at the sandwich method, so this is exactly how you put in your quotation. You start with a statement introducing the quote. So you tell them who is speaking, what the quotation says, get to the quote, put quotation marks in whatever desired citation style that you have, and explain them why you consider the quotation to be important, right? What you take it to say. So if you look at the sandwich method, look at this example where we have the feminist philosopher Susan Bordeaux, right? So the author is very clearly making the fact that this is her credibility. She's a feminist philosopher. And who exactly it is? It is Susan Bordeaux. So Bordeaux is talking about increasing number of women who seeing themselves in the need of a diet, right? So the first four lines that you can see till diet, this concept is actually previewing the ideas that the quotation will support, right? So it is actually building a bridge between what Bordeaux's words are and what the author's words are. And then she moves on to quote. So you can see the quotations in the red, right? And at the end, towards the end, after she mentions the page numbers, she talks about what the quotation really means, what Bordeaux is saying. And then she sets up the writer's own argument, her own argument on the said topic. The circled words, Western, television, broadcasting, they basically are representing the cultural references. Now, quickly moving on to I say, the second half of my presentation, where we would be talking about the moves here, how you respond in three ways. The duh move, duh, right? Something like that, yes. The twist move. And the third move is yes, but, no, but.
So, do you have any issues like hypertension, diabetes?
Yeah.
Hypertension, diabetes.
Dr. Kalani, can I request you to kindly mute yourself? Thank you.
But do you taking any medication for that?
No.
Please remove Dr. LRS Kalani if they cannot do that muting of themselves.
Right, so then we have who cares and so what, and planting a naysayer. It gets even more interesting, trust me. Right, so obviously there are three ways to respond. Now it is your turn. We've talked about what they say. Now it is about what I say, what you say, right? We can respond in three ways: yes, no, or a combination of the two, right? But what is important is you declare your position in relation to the views that you are summarizing, quoting. Else, your readers they're going to get frustrated. So declare your position. Give good arguments. These are moves that can be practiced by kind of a habit formation. Just like, we learn how to drive a car, we know how the gear system works. So the more we practice, we don't even think about the gears anymore, right? If you are a practiced driver. Also, when you enter the conversation, you cannot be a mute spectator to participate. I can't be mute if a conversation is going on. I need to participate. And in order to participate, you need to respond. So the first thing is, a good tactic to begin your response is by stating your stand. Where is your stand? What do you believe in? And then you need to give reasons to support what they say. Means, did the other's argument fail to take any relevant factors into consideration? Or was it based on some faulty, incomplete, incompetent evidence, some questionable objections, assumptions, some flawed logic, right? So this is what I mean. Now, when you're, so let's talk about the duh move, right? Where you are disagreeing. When you say why you disagree, right? There has to be a reason. So the duh move is when you do not disagree with the other's point, but the idea or the assumption that the point is very new and very shocking to you, right? So it is, I won't get into the example. So it is true that, but you see, we already knew that, isn't it? So that is the duh move. I mean, I'm not surprised. This was something I knew. The second move is the twist move, right? The twist move is you take their evidence, you use it to support your claim instead, and twist it to fit your needs. Basically, you take somebody else's thoughts, ideas, no, I'm sorry, I correct myself. You take their evidence that they have taken, which is faulty, which is flawed, which is illogical, and use it to support your own claim and twist it to fit your needs. It is wiser to state a disagreement in frank and very considerate words. So single out only those aspects that are troubling you, that are bothering you, while you might agree with the rest. So this can be a yes and a no both. So it is true that, but we already knew that, right? That is the twist move. Then let's come to the yes. Now, if you're saying the same thing, what others are saying, you're basically just parroting them, right? Or you're just a copycat. That's what most people do. Is take ideas of others, copy it, and get away with it. Actually, that's very silly. Bring something new to the table. Add something that adds value to it, right? If you're agreeing, say that you agree and what makes you agree with it, right? So if you are agreeing with everything that they're saying, well, you are not in a conversation. You have no reason to talk at all, right? So say your words, make it more valued when you're adding something to the table and not just blind passing it. So your text can usefully contribute to the conversation simply by pointing out certain unnoticed implications, explanations that need to be better understood. Maybe it was missed, or it was not noticed, right? It went unnoticed. Now let's come to the yes and no, the two moves, right? Yes but and no but. Now this makes your argument very complex and complicated, but let me simplify it. In the yes but move, if you want to stress on the disagreement at the end of the spectrum, you use this template that although I agree with X up to a point, sorry, my apologies for the typo, I cannot accept his overriding assumption that blah, 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 right? And the no but move is if you want to stress your agreement more than your disagreement, because you agree more than you disagree with the person. So although I disagree with much of what X is saying, I endorse his final conclusion. I give him that credit. So don't delay, be very clear. You can confuse and frustrate your audience if you're not clear. Make that a very important statement. Also, voice markers. And I'm nearing the end of my conversation. Voice markers are who is saying what at what time, right? And that needs to be very clear, because many a times I find most papers these days lack clarity when they are saying and when I'm saying, right? So obviously you can be mistaken. Voice markers are like roadmaps. They are like signposts. They show you, they show the route to your readers, especially with students. You know, sometimes they don't understand difficult texts. Who is saying what? So let's take an example here, where if you look at this example, the first quotation immediately tells us that this is a quotation, the original person is not talking. It is not his own words, right? And then he talks about his own claim. The author does not necessarily agree with the view that he is describing. We are all middle class, or so it would seem, right? So it is his disagreement, right? Doesn't necessarily agree. And then he talks about our national consciousness as shaped in large part by the media, right? Where he's talking about distancing himself from the belief that our national consciousness is being overrated, especially when he comes to the the third sentence where he talks about the result. As a result, our class differences are muted and our collective character is homogenized. I would like to emphasize on the words muted. So class differences get muted, collective character gets homogenized. Now, in the second paragraph, obviously, he talks about yet class divisions are real. So in the first paragraph, he makes his stand very clear to the audience, but in the second paragraph, he is actually shifting his own voice, opposed. There's a shift in his voice, right, which is very clear. He's very direct, very authoritative, very declarative. So moving on to who cares and so what? Why does it matter? It matters because you need to establish relevance, importance to an argument, right? Who cares? Who cares? Why should the audience care about your topic? Why are you even writing? Because some audience cares. Just because it interests you does not mean everybody would be interested. Just because this topic was interesting to me, I'm sure it was not as interesting to everyone else, right? I need to make it meaningful. I need to put in some passion so that everybody gets involved, right? So why should you care? Why are you caring? Make them care, because I'm making you care about it. So who cares? Establish a person or a group that cares about your claims. There can be people. You give ample examples that includes others who also care about the same topic. Imbibe it in your argument for more effective statement, right? For example, if you look at scientists, look at this example. Scientists used to think, obviously, it is making my statement more agreeable, right? So she's strengthening her claim by telling, who cares? Scientists care, right? Now, why does it matter? So, who cares? You can have three statements. You can refute earlier thinking, right? Maybe there are certain claims that were made. You don't care about them. You don't believe in them, right? So you use the refute earlier thinking. For example, I'll read the last one in the refute earlier thinking. Recent studies like these sheds new light on so-and-so, which previous studies had not addressed. So I'm refuting earlier thinking because they haven't taken that claim, right? Or what I can do is I can name specific people or groups who actually have a stake in the claims that they are making and get some details about their views to make my claim more stronger. So these are the people who care. These are experts, authors who have already written before us. And the last one is refer to certain people or groups who should care, who are stakeholders, right? They should care about your claims. So this is where it matters. Now, so what? Why should they care? Obviously, there are implications because this is where you establish they should care simply because this has certain problems. This might affect our society tomorrow. This might affect our climate tomorrow. So this will link to your argument. Now, before taking any more time, I know we are at the paucity of time and I've gone a little way up. This is my last point. Planting a naysayer. Naysayers are people who criticize, naysayers, right? So basically you are introducing, we are introducing our counter argument, our objections, our oppositions into our own argument, right? So any criticism that we anticipate that people will make, that readers will make, so we try to anticipate them and kind of introduce it in our counter argument to make our argument more stronger, more interesting as a result. So take criticism to your advantage, make argument stronger, simply by offering naysayers argument. This will help you check and give a quick improvement to your writing, right? It will help you establish your ethos, right? Or just like in a conversation, we say it and prove without leaving any scope for a counterclaim. So give a preempt opposition. This will also add credibility to your work, right? Because you have thought it all through. You have not given them a point to question you. The question comes, how do you plant it? How do you plant a naysayer in your writing? You use a label to the group that is tied to the topic, right? These can be specific group of people or ideologies like educators, practitioners, teachers, policymakers, stakeholders, or use nameless, faceless naysayers. These are people where I'm not naming. Some experts believe, skeptics object, some people say. So, but be careful. Labels need to be used very carefully. Label, but do not insult or make stereotype comments or marks to any member of the group. It should not undermine your argument, our argument. So do not attack them, right? And how to introduce the naysayer? Two ways. Ask questions. Use questions to introduce the naysayer, right? Questions like, but is my proposal realistic? What are the chances of its actually being adopted, right? So, and don't use any rhetorical questions. Rather, you must answer every question that you think the naysayer will pose to you. So if you don't answer the naysayer questions, you are actually risking confusing your audience. Or you kind of concede the point of agreement but refute the rest of the argument. So you agree, but you don't agree with certain section. Now, very rarely do we agree, disagree, right? And absolutely everything that an author says. So there is always some point of agreement. So use the most productive agreements in this way. A combined vision is important. Let's take
Dr.
an
Dalal,
last
sorry.
point. Last
So
slide.
we're just about to reach 5:30. So just wanted
Yes,
to point it out. Thanks.
last slide. Let the naysayers speak for themselves, right? If you look at the example, I am say get over it. Say the anti-smokers. You are the minority, right? So here, who is the minority? Actually, the minority are the smokers. Who are the anti-smokers? They are the naysayers, right? I needed more time, but thank you, and over to you. Hope you enjoyed my session, first of all. Second, any questions regarding academic writing, any questions, collaborations, research, you're most welcome to mail, contact me. You have my contact email on the screen. Over
right.
to you, Dr. Rayapa.
Thank you
Very
so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Dalal, for a wonderful talk. I mean, I think there were a lot of comments coming in. If you could kindly just stop your presentation, the slide right now, and then we'll just post your email ID in the chat box so that people can get in touch with you. So let me just give a few lines regarding your talk so that people who joined in a little bit later, they might have missed a couple of the important slides in the beginning, and there are a lot of comments coming in. I would request everybody to hold on to their comments because we are requesting for the questions because Dr. Dalal has to leave also. So kindly post your questions and then send in your comments and we'll pass it on to her. So she began by telling us that the book that she referred to, They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. This is by Gerald Graff and Kathy Birkenstein. And it's a wonderful book because definitely it makes it so lively for the youngsters, for the college crowd, and also for us faculty kind of, talk about things in a different way. And when you began with something interestingly, when ELTAI began with his webinar series, I was one of the first speakers and I spoke about effective listening strategies. And today when Dr. Dalal began, she actually pointed out how people don't talk about listening when they talk about academic writing. So that was wonderful to hear that part. Then she came up with the part regarding where you talk about yes, but, no, but. And even before that, she talked about how when she showed that triangular image of having the introduction at one end, and then you have the hook, the context, and the thesis. That is basically the context is the they say part. So without being in between the speaker and your questions, let me have a look at what kind of questions have come up, if there are any. And if people would like to ask a question directly, could you please raise your hands? So there was a question which I saw earlier. This was by Dr. Lab Singh. And the question he's asked is, how do you relate these moves with the mood of the listener? This was a question I saw earlier. And would you like to take this question?
Sure. Sure. So can you please repeat the question?
Yes. So the question is, how do you relate these moves with the mood of the listener?
So very interesting. We don't have a control over the mood of the listener. However, we do have a control over making our content so interesting that it uplifts the mood of the listener, right? So if you have content, if you have knowledge, if you're sharing a knowledge base based on certain facts, certain information which is new, which is helpful, which is more practical, any listener would wake up. If you give them lists, they'll get bored.
All right, thank you so much. We have Dr. Durai, I think, who's raised his hand. Would he like to ask his question by unmuting himself? Danish Durai, you've raised your hand. Would you like to unmute yourself? Or is it by mistake?
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, is there any correspondence between academic writing and business writing? Or is there any connection between academic writing and technical writing?
There is always a connection between all sorts of writing. See, my presentation is not limited to academic writing, right? Conversations are happening on a daily basis in business. Actually, meetings and conversations are the base of any technical writing or business proposals or business conversations, business meetings. They cannot be left in a vacuum, right? You remember putting in the or, you come in, you enter the conversation is already going on. So you need to figure out what is going on, what are others saying, and then you're responding to it. Similarly, in technical communication, technical reports, you would have certain sections where engineers or technical information is being shared, and there might be a gap. So what move do you make to kind of bridge that gap is important. So this would definitely help you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to point out one thing. I actually think that the authors of the book really liked fishing, because there was a lot of reference to like the oars part, the part about the hook part. So it's like actually hooking on, and reeling in that kind of a crowd. And when you are writing, who are you writing for? Like, as you mentioned, you're writing for the audience. When you're talking, when you're speaking, you're talking for the audience. So you definitely have to put yourself in their shoes before you do anything, writing or speaking. And Dr. Dalal has very rightly put it up over there on her screen also while she was saying it. So I'm just going to look ahead if there's anyone else wanting to ask a question. I believe the organizers have posted a form. I would request all of you to kindly fill it up. And if there are any more questions, okay, there is a question coming in from Arvindan, who's asking how to deal with plagiarism apart from using Turnitin. So would you like to take that one?
Sure. So first things foremost, have your ideas correct. Make Your Moves Matter talks about supporting evidence and moves in summarizing. If you're summarizing well, if you are quoting appropriately, those are two formats in which you can ensure that you're not plagiarizing. The third important aspect is when you're writing, you need to give voice markers to signpost your reader when you are writing and when the other author is being quoted, or we are talking about him. That demarcation would help you avoid any sort of plagiarism. Now you're talking about just a minute. Now that you're talking about what did I too much of noise going on in the background. So about Turnitin, right? So Turnitin is only a software. It can only show you a certain part of a similarity index. However, if you've quoted appropriately, giving proper acknowledgement to the due source, there is no scope of any plagiarism at all. So I think this helps you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dalal. Because of the